Hello and welcome to the 22nd installment of Aaron Walker Art Talk. Today I'm joined by Jerome Ramagosa, who is a graduate of Neuroscience and Philosophy out of Tulane University in New Orleans. Jerome, how are you?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Oh, I'm excellent. Today you have chosen Kali Yuga, my illustration. Do you want to explain why you chose that?
So I picked Kali Yuga because of its sort of religious imagery that combined several different, religious beliefs and practices, as well as I'm a big fan of like death imagery in art. And I also thought that it had an interesting sort of, what's the best way to put this? I like using religious imagery combined with like violent imagery. And to me, it kind of represented in some ways how religion is construed to meet the sort of violent desires of people in order to achieve their goals. And how religion often becomes the face of sort of violent struggles or, things like that.
Well, very cool. I think we'll address that last bit about religion meeting violent desires in a minute, but let me just go briefly over kind of the impetus for the piece. So really, it's a bad reading of Hinduism. I messed up the two different Kalis, right? So there's Kali, the goddess, and there's Kali, the demon, that is struck down in like the Kali Yuga, right? And so I could explain it the way that I originally intended, but now it seems kind of dumb because of my misunderstanding. But this was to be like a Western conception of Kali, the goddess, or even Vishnu's final form, right? Or final avatar. So when Oppenheimer says like, I am become death, destroyer of worlds, that one, right? Yes. And that's actually an inscription that's written on the bow. So you can see up here, right?
Right.
That's what the inscription is. But I wanted it to be like a Western version. So there's like these inegalitarian signs. There is this AR-15, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not a scimitar. It's not a scimitar. It is a AR-15. So yeah, it's just meant to be like a Western portrayal of it.
Could you tell me a bit about the cobra, the goblet, and it looks like a dove that's on fire?
Yeah. I mean, so this is full of like symbolism, right?
Right.
And so not signism, symbolism, which is something I've neglected to go over many times in previous episodes when I'm trying to explain like the symbolic weight of things. So like, okay, fine. So the dove is on fire, right? Symbol of peace. This is all about war and destruction. That one's fairly obvious.
Destruction of peace.
The chalice and the snake and the arrows are all symbols that have, I was big into like occultism at the time, just as a general study. And so the chalice has certain meanings in the tarot tradition, like in tarot cards.
Right.
And in, alchemy in general and hermeticism. And so like I don't know necessarily how to just go into like what they mean as symbols, especially since symbols have meaning beyond meaning, right? Like they mean a thing that's kind of accessible, but what makes them symbols is that they're inaccessible.
Okay. Yeah. No, this piece reminds me a lot of, are you familiar with John Baisley, who does the album artwork for Baroness, as well as a lot of other bands? He's also the singer and guitarist of Baroness. He has a lot of these pieces with, beautiful, usually female forms, juxtaposed with like lots of symbolism. And this like sort of reminded me of some of his work because he'll have, skulls and birds and arrows and wheat and all of these different elements kind of creating this very beautiful, very symbolic painting.
I think I've seen like one Baroness album cover, but it's not like fixed in my mind.
Right.
But I'll definitely have to check it out. And I'll probably like add some examples and post like,
yeah,
our audience knows. But very interesting. Let's return briefly to your comment about religion meeting violent desires. Could you elaborate on that?
So, at least in my opinion, and I think it's sort of verified through a lot of history, people, or especially governments and regimes, can have, these greeds and these desires that they often use violent ends to meet. And oftentimes, such in cases of like the Crusades or even conflicts, more recent conflicts in, the Middle East and really everywhere in the world, people have used religion as a face for these, a face to justify violence. And oftentimes the goal that whatever regime has in mind has nothing to do with religion, but religion is often used as a way to motivate the people into to certain behaviors that they might otherwise not find justifiable.
Well, I mean, I think that most people would agree with that we have examples of history where regimes explicitly utilize religion to justify their policies or their military strategy, what have you, very Machiavellian, right? But I think that the problem with this line of thought for a lot of because it's something you might hear often, say on the internet,
right,
is that it implies that all religions are necessarily pacifistic, right? And that the violent traditions of these religions are, in some sense, heresies, right? But I think that you could look at something like Hinduism and very clearly tell that it's not pacifistic, that it has archetypal warriors installed in the myths, and that even if you look at something like Christianity, which is often portrayed as, oh, just turn the other cheek. Of course, right. It says turn the other cheek in one verse, and in another verse it says, if you don't have a sword, sell your possessions until you can buy a sword. And I am not I didn't come here to make everyone love each other. I came to turn brother on brother and sister against sister and father against child, right? And same in the Buddhist tradition, and obviously in the Islamic tradition, all of these things. So yeah.
You might just have trouble with Jainism. That might be the only... Unless you step on a beetle by accident.
Right.
But no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. In pretty much every religious text that I've studied, and I'm not a theologian or
right.
I didn't study religious studies as like a major or anything like that, but religion has always been something that I've delved into a lot. And when you explore these texts, you realize that on the surface, everybody wants to emphasize it's all about peace and harmony, and every religion has its violent verses, its violent texts.
I know some people who are pagans, who are Norse pagans, who think that these texts, that the Havamal and these other like Nordic texts are pacifistic.
Oh, man.
Literally, this is a warrior religion.
Yeah.
Heaven is a place where you do battle and you like have virgins coming to you. Like, no, it's not. Like, every religion, I think, has a pacifistic contingency in it, that there are people who are willing to, and actually, I'll say it like this: religion is only as pacifistic as the people that adhere to it. It can be turned either way. I'll just put in the video that we cut out. But basically, I was saying that religion is only as pacifistic as the people that adhere to it. And so there's always a contingency of pacifists in every religion, the same way that there's a contingency of warhawks in every religion. That it just depends. It's always going to be the tool of the people that adhere to it.
And to some extent, it's the tool of the leaders in particular. The people who have sort of the say on how to interpret the religion in any context. And part of that is going to be due, I think, to, what the general population practicing that religion believes. But sometimes you have radical shifts simply because some prominent scholar or some prominent figure in the religion has an agenda. And maybe it's the agenda of the elites in that country. Maybe it's a personal agenda, but individual people or individual groups within a larger population can have significant impact into the way that the general population ends up conceiving of the religion for at least a period of time.
Absolutely. So, Jerome, do you have any more questions about this piece?
Yes. So on one of Kali's arms, there is a symbol where it's the equal symbol, but not equal. What is that?
It's inegalitarianism. That's the sign of inegalitarianism.
Okay.
And it's kind of a new symbol that really only came up from like Facebook having like these arguments for equality in marriage, I believe, like before gay marriage became like a federal issue. And Facebook had these things that you would put over your avatar, right? And it was like, I'm in support of that. And so then all these people who were obviously opposed to it started putting the inegalitarian symbol, which then became about the ideology more broadly, not specifically to the gay issue, but about inegalitarianism. So I think that this Western version is obviously meant to be portrayed as like evil. It's like, oh, he's scary and bad and evil. He has an AR-15 and he doesn't like peace and he's an inegalitarian, right?
Yeah.
And even like notice that there's a skull that has like I don't know if you're familiar with that symbol, but it's the sigil of Satan, right? It's the common Satanist symbol on the skull around his neck.
Yes, I couldn't. The image on my desktop isn't very large, but zooming in now I see it.
Right. But so all of these different symbols play into the general character of this westernized version of Kali, right?
Right.
Because these, I think, are some of the foundational sort of beliefs of Western civilization so it's egalitarianism in a sense, but it's also inegalitarianism and hierarchy. That there's always this balance in Western thought between these two things. Even you can look at like all democratic societies in antiquity, the Greeks, they still had hierarchy. Like this is always like a kind of balance that is struck in the same way. If we're talking in like a Jungian sense about like Satanism, for instance, this like hedonistic opposition to all that is good and righteous in society, degeneracy. Again, all societies in the West have had this sort of opposition to that. And so these are all playing into that general character of a Western version of Kali.
Cool.
All right. So Jerome, do you have any more questions on this one?
I think that's all for now.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I'll see you in the next episode. And also a quick plug, if you want to buy one of these, you can get them at store.davidaaronwalker.com. Thank you, Jerome. See you in the next episode.
Thank you. See you next time.